and I certainly hope it passes. And I have to say that I happen to live in the Leslie Johnson district, and you know, frankly, I'm hungry for some change. I personally feel like I am not having representation on this council because she is prohibited from sitting on a committee and making committee decisions. I think it hurts my district, although I don't think that there's anything that can be done about it at this point. It's a terrible situation for the citizens, and I think we have really lost our representation.
Yeah, I think Eddie's right on this. There's, I think, kind of a simple equation that everybody that looks at this honestly can understand. The more light you put onto the process, the better. The less light you put on, the more coverage you put on it, and the more you put things off on somebody's desk, the more potential for problems are, even if it's purely innocent. Like I say, I think if Councilman A or Councilwoman B has a concern about a proposal that's going to affect their district, I think they should be right to say, look, I want to have a public discussion about this. But pull it up, set a time limit on it, have your public decision or discussion, and make a decision to move on. Part of the problem is these things just have a way of taking on a life of their own. They go sit on somebody's desk, and then all the other stuff falls in. You know, somebody will start having a conversation about, well, you know, I've got this great foundation over here that could use some money, or I've got people over here that would like to get jobs, or I got this. And even if you wanted to concede that they were kind of innocently dropped out, the perception just reinforces the negative image of the county. So everything in this regard, I think, is good. And I think this is one case where the opposition is more personal than substantive.
I can't fathom how, after what happened this week, that the legislature will not pass some major ethics reform, but it won't be unanimous. And we have the only county council in the state that went out and hired private lobbyists to fight ethics reform.
Oh.
Yeah, so. That's in and of itself. But you know, the thing that's really troubling to me, we talked about it earlier, this whole idea about ethics in government applies to 10 elected officials in the entire state of Maryland. The county executive of Prince George's County and the 9 council members. I mean, all the other counties and all the other cities all across the state operate in an entirely different way. And we've got this little, to me, that's the embarrassing part of that there was a state law that was constructed to try to bring light to this process years ago. And although it was probably a good attempt, by leaving that hole in it where the county council people can join a slate and bring money over to the slate, one of those well-intended things that nobody followed up on. And but like I say, I personally am embarrassed that the law exists and only applies to 10 elected officials in the entire state.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that we're having this discussion in this day and age. I mean, there are some people who actually do not think that there is a problem right now. And, you know, for me, it just, you kind of go back to, no, I know you didn't go to law school, Fred, but you go back to law school. There's a concept that you're introduced to, and it's called ethics.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people forget about, you know, how ethics is defined. I mean, it's really, you know, to me, this is about restoring the public's trust. And not only the public institutions that are there for them, but also the people who serve in them. You know, so of course it's not about, you know, I do believe in the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But the system is broken.
Oh, it's broken.
Yeah.
It's certainly broken.
Now, have we beaten this horse senselessly enough? Lynn, you mentioned you have a thirst for change. So you're hungry for change, and you look around the world, and there's Tunisia, Egypt, Yemen, Upper Marlboro, change everywhere. Bahrain. My question is for the panel is, in the Middle East, is it going to be democracy or is it going to be martial law?
It's hard to say. A lot, you know, the dominoes are in line in Egypt, and they're going to go one way or the other. I mean, people have to understand the military have been in control of Egypt since 1950, and they're in control now. By and large, they're respected there. They're mostly representatives of the middle class of Egypt, and I think that's going to work out. the charge of the week for absolute hypocrisy is to the Iranian leadership, who last week was cheering on the protesters in Egypt and now threatening to execute anybody that protests. And somebody just told me the other day, there've been 66 executions in Tehran just in the last 10 or 12 months for protesting the government. I mean, so it's incredible that these people still have
that
the
could
courage
be
to do
ethics
this.
reform for Prince George's County. Right?
Yeah, we can hang people around.
Right.
But I think once you get that genie, once it gets out of the bottle, when people realize they can be in control of themselves and they can have ownership of property and have opportunities to succeed on their own merit, you're not going to get it back in the bottle.
How about the fact that the top leader of the insurrection in Egypt is a top executive at Google, using social networking to gather his folks? Is that a change? I mean, is that the future of?
It's a new world.
It is.
Yeah, I don't know. It is the brave new world, I guess. But yeah, you would think traditionally you get people coming up out of the military or maybe out of academics or academia or something. Here you have a business guy, a marketing guy, that came forward and had the ability to express hope and optimism to a lot of people, most of whom are all under 30 or 40. And they just said, we're going to stay here until change happens. And he did a few days in a local prison there. But I think when he was released, that was the sign that it was over.
Good ethics promotes democracy. And maybe we need some of that same passion here in Upper Marlboro.
Maybe we ought to all go down
the same extent.
Protest.
Yeah, we'll have 3,000 people show up in front of the courthouse. And
But that whole scene was just amazing to watch unfold on television.
Through Al Jazeera, because people's internet wasn't working, and
Exactly.
and then Bowie, you get Al Jazeera on Verizon, but not on Comcast, I think.
Well, the interesting challenge for me as an observer of history is the one here that wasn't burdened by going to law school. It's going to be interesting to watch how the president and his staff deals with this, particularly with Egypt. He's got three role models to look at. He can look to Truman for after the war about how American government invested time, money, and energy into the nations of Europe to try to hold them together and keep out the corrupt influences that were trying to take over. You have Carter, who was an absolute zero after the original thing, and you had Reagan after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Actually went into Poland and went into those states and said, look, let's help. So you got two presidents, probably diametrically opposed in ideology, but both who put the American interest forward and were willing to embrace these people and help them. And one of those models was President Obama's going to have to follow. I hope it's the first two, not the Carter. But the opportunity there for really good things to happen is good. There's also an opportunity for really bad things to happen.
Right. I'm just thinking if they closed the Suez with all the oil tankers that go through.
A million barrels a day, which is almost equivalent to the new field they discovered in North Dakota. If this government will allow us to drill in our own country, they're saying now we'll get 1 million barrels a day out of a field there.
Oh,
Wow.
Drill.
Yeah, North Dakota. Who cares? Really? I mean,
Has the lowest unemployment rate in the United States.
and it's the only state that does not have a deficit right now. The only
That's
state
true.
government.
That's true. So there's a lot to be said for that. But you see how all these things get linked together,
Yes.
and how American wheat is going to be replacing some of the Mediterranean oil in terms of commodities. So like I say, I'm optimistic. I think the potential for positive and good is probably as good now as it's been in a long time, both here in Prince George's and the Middle East and probably around the world. If we have the courage to go forward and do it and not sit back and let the people down the State Department say, no, we can't do this, we can't do that. But interesting to watch.
One of my favorite visuals from the Egyptian protest was this poster of Mubarak making him look like Obama with a half red, half blue. And the bottom it said, no, he can't.
Yeah, it's kind of. Well, the thing that always amazes me is when you see a protest in Cairo or one in Iran or somewhere else, a lot of the protest signs are printed in English. I mean, is that just for Western consumption? Maybe everybody in those countries reads English. I don't know. But you know, I heard a great line. There was a bunch of the young Egyptians there that were quoted, were being watched on television, they were being on television, and they were saying great things. They said, "We want to be America. We want to be Americans. We want to be like you guys." And you know, I don't know how you don't say, "Gee, that's something that makes you feel great." You should swell after you listen to that.
I think we need more immigrants.
We're immigrants
Yeah, we need more.
that speak English.
I mean, that's another big issue in Annapolis. Is there's a big push called the DREAM Act for to allow illegal immigrants to have in-state tuition at state colleges, and that's been a big, the big hot issue. Marriage equality has been a hot issue. Death penalty is still a hot issue, and we're only 1 month into it. We have 2 months left. So.
Not to mention the budget problems.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say those three issues are all critical and all important, and none of them have a budget item or dollar attached to them. So that's where the legislature is going to focus.
That's right. That's right.
They don't have to make any serious budget decisions. They can talk about these social issues.
Well, the House and the Senate are faced with a choice: either accept the governor's budget with no tax increases and some serious cuts in certain areas, but not terrible because there's fund transfers, or put together a package of revenue enhancers and do some of the cut restorations like to public health and public education. So that's the question that they have, and you know the easy thing to do is to just take the governor's budget as it is. But we'll see.
It's going to be interesting because like the great line from the judge who's not with us on this discussion, has a great assessment. You know, a lot of our Democrat friends don't want to cut programs, but are willing to raise taxes. Our Republican friends are opposed, absolutely to raising taxes and want to. So until there's some kind of a meeting of the minds on that, and probably some combination of both of them, we're just going to spin wheels, and people will demagogue each other, and we'll waste another session.
I've never really seen the demagoguery in Annapolis before.
Oh, you speak with forked tongue, counselor.
Yeah.
Did they teach you that in law school 101 too? Okay. Now I know where that statue came from. See no evil, hear no evil.
No,
That's what you three ought to do, like this.
A couple more weeks, your office will issue revenue estimates to see if there's any extra money to play with. I don't know whether it will be or not, but all the economic indicators have been good, but it won't be a huge amount,
No,
I'm sure.
no.
All right. Well, I think this is the end, right? I was given that signal. So we're 1 month into Annapolis. Come back next month. Tune in. We'll be at the end of the second trimester. We'll have to just go forward. No, nothing left to do with that. Any predictions for what's going to happen in Annapolis with the budget and taxes? And you think they're going to do it or not?
It'll be interesting. The governor's already talking about a supplemental budget proposal that's going to come forward. I'm hopeful that there's going to be some effort to restore some money to cities and towns through highway user funds, et cetera. But it's going to be a tough time because the governor's kind of leaving it to the legislature to bite the bullet on taxes.
Predictions?
Yeah, I'm going to stay optimistic, but I do have a feeling that session will be extended by a few days.
Oh.
All right, Lynn, you get the last word.
Ooh, I want to say no new taxes, but I think there might be a little gas tax adjustment.
Right. And that's the last word. Thanks for tuning in. Come back next month for a scintillating discussion. Thank you.